Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovenel. I have to admit something. I'm a bit of a nomad at heart. If I could just jump in a van and drive around the world, I would. I'd go see places, just experience life. And today we're going to learn about the musical Passing Through. It's about a college grad who decides to find himself by walking from Philadelphia to California and the strangers he meets along the way. So let's get right into it. I'd like to welcome the creators of the musical Passing Through, Eric Ulloa and Brett Ryback. Eric, Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. No problem, no problem. All right, we want to get to know you guys a little bit first. Eric, we're going to start with you. I'd like to know who Eric is in 30 seconds. What is Eric's bio in 30 seconds?
Eric is a loud, passionate Cuban who just wants to create at all times, and finally found that writing allows him to do the most with that and subsides those crazy demons, period.
First time I've heard any of those words, demons, loud, in the same sentence for a bio. I love it. So perfect. Brett, can you top Demon Eric?
I can. No. Yeah, I'm an actor and a musical storyteller, and I grew up in Milwaukee, just outside. I was a child actor in Milwaukee and Chicago, and went to UCLA for my degree in music, and yeah, and in the last, however many years of my life, I've worked as an artist across the country at various regional theaters and film and TV, and I was some notable things. I did the off-Broadway cast of Murder for Two, and a recent TYA production of Nate the Great that I created, and a podcast musical called In Strange Woods. Those are some of the things I've done.
Very cool. So I'd like to find out a little bit about the backstory of people to find out how they got to where they are. So Eric, again, I'm going to start with you. Were you always into musical theater growing up, or were you kind of the black sheep of the family when it came to arts, or was that a family thing?
Well, actually, it's funny. It is a family thing. So on my mother's side, which is the Mora side of the family, and I think she had her eye out for this when I started getting into creative stuff, because my mother's side has a very creative streak, but always people, poets, painters, people that my grandmother used to love to sing, but because of the way things were in Cuba, she was not allowed to, because being a singer back then meant that you worked in conditions that would be unfitting of a woman at the time. And so there's a lot of that there, but I feel like a lot of them allowed the dark side of the demons, not the good side of the demons, come into play, and they let it kind of overwhelm them, and no one ever actually was able to make a successful career of it. So it is in my background big time. I am truly the first of my family on that side to ever actually make a living for now, almost 20 years with it. I originally wanted to be an animator. I loved painting and drawing, and that was my entry, my gateway drug into the arts. I was drawing, and I wanted to be an animator for Disney, and for years and years and years and years. And then when I was in my teens, I actually took an animation course via, I forget if it was via Disney or via Ringling School, something like that. And I realized that I did not want to be an animator, and the tedious nature of cells and drawing 200 drawings to make an arm go up once, not in my future. And then theater came along when I was kind of 15, 16. I was a little lost, and saw our school's production of Little Abner, which is a show that no one does, but our school did. And I always loved that my entry show was Little Abner out of all the shows in the lexicon. I saw people doing that, and all I could think was, I want to do that, and I think I can do that. I think I have a voice in this, and I kind of jumped in right before graduation, so I had to choose very quickly what college was going to be, and I dove in head first, and here I am.
Nice. And Brett, yourself, you the black sheep, or is this normal?
Well, no, this is definitely not normal in my family. But my mom was a very musical person. She was a singer in choirs, and she choreographed musicals at the high school that she taught at. And so she really encouraged me when I was very young. We have in Milwaukee a really renowned children's theater called First Stage, and that's been there since the early '80s. And it was a few years old when I was 5, and she encouraged me to audition for a play there, which I ended up getting. And that was, I mean, that was just it for me. I was like, this is incredible. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then when I was about 10, I started, I'd always kind of been interested in music and creating music because I would like write little ditties and singing tunes. And we had a piano in the house, but I didn't really know how it worked. But when I was around nine, actually, I started to teach myself piano. And then about a year later, my mom enrolled me in some piano lessons with a great teacher in Milwaukee. And from there, I really started playing and writing songs and musicals. And I always thought that I would go to school to study acting. And it was actually my piano teacher who suggested that I go to study something else, because I had been acting as a child. I had been doing it, like I said, in Milwaukee and also in Chicago, doing a lot of commercial and television work. And so he thought, if I'm going to spend the money to go to school, I should maybe learn something that I haven't been doing for the last, 18 years of at that point, 13 years of my life. And that was a great decision, because it really diversified my abilities and my, knowledge base. And so I came out of school and continued to perform but was always writing. And then right around the year I turned 30 is when I met Eric, and we began working on the project together. And in my 30s so far, my career, I've still acted a lot, but my career in writing has really taken precedence. So it's just sort of a weird, they weave together in and out.
Nice. And how did your two parallel lines finally converge, Eric? Where did you meet each other?
Well, Brett and I met because a former agent of mine went to go see, and Brett, if I'm telling the story wrong, please jump in, went to go see a concert of songwriters. And Brett, you were doing a number there, yes?
It was my concert.
Brett's concert, well, there we go.
Yeah, he'd been invited by a friend to come and see it.
I'm telling the story brilliantly. So it was Brett's concert, and he saw Brett in it, obviously, in Brett's talent, and I think had interest in representing Brett, and said, "What are you looking for?" And Brett said, "Well, I'm looking for book writers." And so I had just kind of started working on the first draft of my play, 26 Pebbles, and I think he saw that our sensibilities would line up, and so sent Brett my way. And Brett and I met up at a cookie shop named Schmackery's on 45th and 9th. Everyone that goes to New York knows this. And not only did we hit it off as far as our sensibilities in real life and what we wanted to do with the musical theater and stories we tell, but we realized that everyone that walked by knew both of us. So we realized that our lives were kind of intertwined. And so it kind of just felt like kismet to start creating.
Wow.
And I'll say that, like, what Eric said, I think is the most important part of that, is that we really had a shared vision of what we felt musicals could do in the world, that we felt that they were a medium for telling important stories that were also entertaining, but we're sort of just, dealing with deeper and kind of more challenging themes than maybe you might see in a typical musical.
And there's a phrase, Brett, what's that phrase you use all the time that I love about new musicals, and they don't have to be morose. They can be about we have a very interesting shared sensibility about that. Like, new musicals, you can leave a show and it can give you a sense of hope. It can give you a sense of greater good, a sense of connection. I'm always very interested, and Brett and I seem to always meet at that a musical can be a tool in the greater good of the world, and not have to be something to, like, and there's room for all of it. But I think our works always speak to the idea that, kind of pathways to betterments, in a way, of a world.
I had an English teacher in high school who, his definition of art, what made something, art, was that it made its audience want to live life at a higher level.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, and so I've always been struck by that, and you know, I feel like that is a job that I strive for.
Very cool. So you two have met. You're eating cookies together. Do you both like the same cookies? That's the question. Or is there a battle when it comes to cookies too, which is the best? We're going off on a tangent, but this is an important question.
You know, everything at Schmackery's is good. I think I'm a basic the one with the bacon bits. I think it's just chocolate chip and bacon.
Oh.
Really, really delicious. I don't even remember what I got that time, but because I was living and working in New York at the time, and I was probably overloading on Schmackery's, which is what you do when you're not from there. You just do it too much. So I don't know what I got. Maybe
there was a moment where it was like the heyday of Schmackery's, and this is actually pre the heyday, like it really hitting hard. Because I remember like I used to get like the frosted one, and that would always be and then halfway through I was like, I cannot finish this frosted one because it's too much. But cut to like a year later, you know, my opening night and On Your Feet. Including bread, I believe. I had 6 boxes sent to me of Schmackery. So I had 72 cookies in my dressing room, and I was like, okay, I think we've hit a wall here.
It's also right next door to Broadway Dance Center. So what is funny to me is that you see all these people that have just come out of like a dance class that look, you know, incredibly fit and sweaty and everything, and they're getting Schmackery. So it makes you feel healthier than it probably is.
Yeah.
They're not a sponsor, but after this, I might have to contact them.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it back.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'd say bacon and chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah. They're known for creating kind of very interesting flavors, and that savory sweet combo is really delicious.
Okay, I need this pandemic to end, the border to open, and get me down there again, because I did not know. I am going to check that out for sure.
Yep.
So was Passing Through your first show together that you created, or did you have some other ideas beforehand once you met?
No, Passing Through was we tossed a couple ideas back and forth, but that was the first one that we landed on and actually dove into.
Yeah. And what made you, who introduced the Passing Through to who?
I did. I was driving back from Connecticut. It was on the first trips of research for what would be my play, 26 Pebbles, and Passing Through. I mean, sorry, the story itself was I was driving back, and it was a very emotional week, and I hadn't had the chance to kind of shed, because I was there listening and recording and taking testimony for what would be the play. And I was in the car, and the story came out about a young man walking across the country looking for answers, and just the right story at the right moment, and, you know, had me pulled over on the side of the freeway, you know, with emotion, because it just was the release I needed. And then, you know, and then checking back in with myself and listening to it again, finding it online, like about a week later, 2 weeks later, and thinking like, was it just that moment? Is it actually something that feels, because in the moment I was like, this is something, I have to do something with this. But, you know, sometimes emotion grabs the best of you. But it kept on lingering and lingering. And my rule of thumb is that if an idea just sits there and lingers, it's meant to be explored fully. And by the time I met Brett, I think it was almost a year, or maybe 7 months after I had first heard it. I forget exactly the timeline. It's all so blurry now. It's a pandemic. But at some point, yeah, after I think it was closer to a year, I met Brett, and it was pretty concrete in my head that it did need to be a musical, and you know who the right, you know, person should be, and you know, enter Brett.
And because it's based on a book or something to that effect?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Well,
I've talked to other people.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. I think there's a delay. Go for it.
No worries. I was going to say that I've talked to other people who try to get the rights to these things, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's difficult. Brett, how was that experience? Was the creator and the author of the original story or book, were they receptive, or was it you kind of had to coax them along?
The short answer is very receptive. I think that you know, this Andrew Forstoffel is the guy's name, and he, you know, I think when we first reached out to him, which was kind of early in our process, and we said, hey, we'd like to, you know, adapt your story, and at that point we had just heard the podcast version of it, the audio version of the story. I think it was like any normal person would be if some random people called you up and said, I want to make a musical of your life moment. Like, it's a weird thing. And to his credit, he was like, okay, keep working on that. But at the moment I'm working on a memoir of it. And so I can't really, think about that, but don't stop. And then later on down the road, we reached out to him again because we really needed to formalize the agreement. And we shared with him an early draft of the piece. And then I was working in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and Andrew was living in Philadelphia at the time. And so we met, or he was in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. We met in Philadelphia, and he had read the draft and had some thoughts about it. And I think, and I remember that first moment very specifically because he was guarded in a way that Andrew is not guarded. Andrew is actually the opposite of guarded. But I think that we later found out that he had sort of a bad encounter with a publisher, and I think was just very unsure of what was happening. But we got along really well during that meeting, and so and at that time he had finished his memoir. It hadn't come out yet. He gave Eric and I an advance copy to read, and said, read this. I think it will fill in some gaps for you. And then, but we can continue to move forward and work on a contractual agreement. And so that was sort of the process of that. And when we read the book, Eric, you tell this story pretty good about me calling you up. And
oh yeah, because we had a lot of, the podcast is 40 minutes. You can only glean so much from that.
Yeah.
And so we created, a draft of the story, and then the Andrew and the publishers sent us advance copies, like the ones that I guess they give out to all the reviewers and everything. So it was like, the cover was not even the real thing. We got that version, which is really cool. I'd never had that before. And we get these the book sent to us, and Brett's a much faster reader than I am. Always, he's always like 150 pages ahead of me. And he calls me, and he was well ahead. And he's like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe." Like, he goes, "Are you at page whatever?" I'm like, "I'm not even close to there yet." He's like, "What do you see?" He's like, "Have you gotten to it?" I'm like, "Not even close yet." He goes, "Oh, what you see?" So we start realizing that the things that we had kind of arrived at in the story, which is a testament to how well the podcast is structured, because he created a path that led us naturally to this.
Yeah.
We hadn't quite guessed. We kind of guessed right. We got arrived at truth most times. There were one or two things that were off, and in fact, the best part was that when we reached out to Andrew, I was like, "Do you?" And he's like, "Well, use the real story." I go, "Well, the real story is a little harsher." And he goes, "That's the reality of it, right?" And so we went with the truth of certain sections, which I thought was very helpful to us. It gave details and stuff like that make, that's the best kind of story, where it's super detailed, because all it does is make it more universal, because we all find ourselves in that stuff.
So
and he became a great resource then as we continued to move forward. Both him and his mother
Yeah.
were available to us. We had multiple interviews with them to just kind of dig in a little deeper and get clarity on stuff. And he's been an incredible, both him and his entire family and their crew have been very big supporters of the piece as it's continued to move along its developmental life.
So tell us the basic plot of the show then. I gave a brief overview, but tell us, what is it in your words?
Oh, Brett, you're better at this.
Right. So it's about a young man who, after graduating from college, realizes that he still has a lot of unanswered questions about what kind of man he is supposed to be in the world. And he doesn't quite know where that emptiness or that gap is coming from. And he gets the idea to go on this journey that he thinks he doesn't really know what it's going to be. So he sets out maybe just to the end of the state line, and just for as far as the road will go. And he continues to walk. And as he does, he meets a lot of individuals along the way who start to give him perspective based on their lives and their struggles. And in so doing, he starts to see the sort of common humanity that we all share. And then at a key moment, he meets a woman who's very much in a crisis in her life. And that opens up a wound that is in Andrew, that is essentially the wound that was created when his father walked out on him and his mother when he was a young man. And that really throws him for a loop. He ends up getting sick and ending up in a hospital in New Orleans, where he meets a 102-year-old Black woman named Miss Emma. And she sort of gives him an even broader perspective on what it means to forgive and what it means to have an existential struggle. And that encourages him to keep moving closer and closer towards some sort of resolution with his father. And then, spoiler, he makes it to California.
Very cool.
Well, there goes ticket sales, Brett.
Yep. And good night, everybody. Eric, when did you first start this, and then when did it first go up? What was the timeline for that?
Oh, we started writing it in 2015, right, Brett?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a and this whole project was literally homegrown at Goodspeed. Like, I mean, talk about, like, we went up there with, I think, the end of the road, the kind of what Brett calls the I don't know what I want song. And like the seeds of ideas. And that was 2015. And then we were invited, and that was to their Johnny Mercer Writers Grove. And then we were invited back the following year to continue working on it. At that point, we were then in Act 2, and starting that off. The next year, 17, we were at Ryback Writers Retreat.
Yes.
We got to kind of put it all together and
16,
have our.
That was 16.
Oh, so yeah, you're right. It was 16.
A year off.
Yeah. And then we had that, and then we were invited up to the 2018. Goodspeed asked us to be one of the 3 shows at the Festival of New Musicals. What that is they do readings of 3 new musicals. We cast it all with students from Boston Conservatory and the Hart School, who are just ridiculously talented, and they perform readings of the pieces, 1 per night. We were the final day. We were Sunday matinee. We were just in that magical situation that those lights went out and the lights came up and the entire opera house was on their feet. A few days later, we got a offer from Goodspeed saying we want to put it on our season next year. Wow. So it's been a very fast path for a new musical, which is exciting. Yeah. I think, Goodspeed believed in this from the beginning. They kind of saw, there was a moment where in the first Writers Grove where we got to the Miss Emma character and Brett wrote her song "Keep on Walking," and I think that's where it all clicked for everyone at Goodspeed. They saw, oh, this story is much deeper than just a young man walking across the country. I like to always say that it's a story about facing trauma. It's a story about our better angels. And what I loved about, and during the stream, we heard it a lot, and it was just wonderful. People would say it was so nice to spend 2.5 hours in your America. And the idea of because to me, it's not our America. To me, it's what we have had and what we can have, and what we do have, and we come together and admit we've done things that are wrong. We've done horrible things, but you know what? If we don't take that and look at it and examine it and learn from it and move forward with the understanding that we did do that and that we are going to be better, we don't move forward, really. We're just taking steps. We're not actually moving forward. So I just think it's I always call it a musical about our better angels and what we really can be. And it's through the microcosm of one young man walking the country, learning from people's stories and trauma and joys and lows and everything else.
Nice. Very nice. So so went on at Goodspeed. What's happened to the show since? It got recorded, I believe, right? For live stream.
Right. Yeah. Goodspeed, thankfully had created this really great archival capture of it. And the purpose of that was for after the the live performance, that we could send it around to producers and continue to move it forward in its life. And then of course the pandemic happened, which nobody saw coming. And so as Goodspeed started to figure out what they were going to do in order to keep their doors open and keep their subscribers satisfied while everything was shut down, they crafted this new streaming service called Goodspeed On Demand. And because the capture of the show was so good, and because the reception of the show was so good, they asked if we would allow them to use that as their first offering, which we were happy to do. And right now we are essentially looking for the next production that we can do with it. We're beginning to have conversations with producers to find that next home. But that's really where we are in its life, so that we can continue to work on it, continue to make it stronger, and reach more people.
The stream really helped us to be able to take, it's a 200-seat theater, the Norma Terrace. It's tiny, and there's only a certain amount of run. We got extended, which is wonderful, but still, it's only a certain amount of run. So the stream was lovely. We got to have, thousands more got to see it. We got to see it, go throughout the U.S., come off the shores. We got to see, lovely things like, this young man in Puerto Rico in his living room, playing his take on Brett's, on As I Go Passing Through, and just seeing that it permeate beyond and start to go into a little more of the lexicon of musical theater. And it was just, it allows the piece to kind of breathe a little more and reach more people, which is very exciting.
Very nice. Well, congratulations on the show. I watched it. It was great. It was fantastic. So, and yeah, the production values and the show and the songs. And so I always say congratulations to writers, because it's not easy to get a show on stage, right? And no matter how it goes, you did something that not everybody can do. So congratulations on that. So what have you been doing since the pandemic hit? Have you been working on something new? Are you allowed to talk about it? If you are or not, Eric, what have you been doing with yourself over the pandemic?
Oh gosh.
What hasn't Eric been doing?
What hasn't Eric been doing? I'm not one to sit still, as my first explanation to you said. What did I do? Gosh, I jumped into a bunch of stuff. I was working, I was teaming up with my buddy Alex Sinalaris he wrote On Your Feet, which I met him that way. I was in the original cast of that. He's best known for winning the Oscar for Birdman, for writing it, one of the writers of it. He and I became good buddies. I've been taken under his wing as kind of his assistant on projects. So we've been working on 2 different films. We were on the second film working on that. Pandemic hit. We took a little pause for a second. I started working on my first film for a company that brought me in to do to work on this thing. I started working on a ton of new series, a couple of podcasts for the Nickelodeon Noggin Network. I started a podcast to help the theater community get involved in the election and to make sure that Joe Biden was our president, because I could not allow anything else to happen but that outcome. A bunch of things. I worked with, Brett and I started the beginnings of what we cannot talk about, but will soon be a very exciting venture of a new musical that we'll be together on. Literally just kind of the days are just full of stuff and things and writings.
And Brett, yourself, what have you been doing over the pandemic to keep yourself busy?
The primary thing that I did was create this musical podcast called In Strange Woods. And it was something that was supposed to go into production last year. And we were delayed a little bit because of the pandemic, but we were able to record everybody remotely, have an incredible cast of people, including Beth Level, Patrick Page, Michaela Watkins, Donalyn Champlin. And it's an original narrative musical that's available on all streams. And that really took up the bulk of the latter half of 2020. And then most recently, as Eric said, we have begun a project that, eventually we'll be able to talk about. And I'm also developing a screenplay with one of my writers on the podcast. And that's really been the bulk of what's been keeping me going.
What Brett won't brag about, and I will for him, is that his podcast, Strange was not only is fantastic and really incredible, but it was #1 on Apple iTunes. So I'll say that for him. It really is something people should check out because it shows just the depth of his work.
Well, with speaking of the podcast, Brett, over the pandemic, did you learn some new skills that you probably might not have, taken on? Did you learn editing of music and stuff online or software because of the podcast?
Yes and no. I mean, I didn't have to be. We were fortunate enough that we had a lot of things in place, like I said, because we were planning to go into production. So we were working with great, editors. There was a lot of problems that needed to be solved. I don't know that I was, the person who solved most of them, but like things like, distance, recording and that sort of stuff. But so it was really fascinating to be a part of that kind of project. But the only thing that I can think of that I really sort of dove a little more headlong into is getting better at playing guitar. I had to do for the podcast. I did all the orchestrations, and a lot of which were on guitar. And that is not my main instrument. It's not the most comfortable. I had to play guitar. I learned to play guitar more recently for a production of Charlie Brown that was an actor-musician production that I did in Cincinnati 2 years ago now. But really, to be completely honest, working with our orchestrator on Passing Through, August Eriks Moen, he was the one who I learned the most about how to write for guitar and what is possible. And so I applied a lot of those skills when I was doing it for the podcast. So I think that the thing for me is just finding stories that were interesting to tell. I was just talking to a friend about this the other night. 2020 was such an inundation of events and emotion for a lot of people, and so as an artist, it was I'm very much. I feel like, we need distance in order to digest some of the stuff. And, for so much of 2020, we were just still eating the meal. And so I felt overwhelmed as an artist of like, what exactly am I going to say about any of this? And what is my point of view? And so it was a lot of listening. It was a lot of, of just kind of being with my own thoughts and being with my own perspectives. And, as Eric knows, we've had many conversations about just digesting the various events that happened in 2020. And I think that that's going to be how it is for a lot of artists. I think there's going to be an explosion of work that's going to come in the next few years as we start to sort of look at what's happened in this short period of time, because so much has. For sure.
Eric, did you learn any new skills, anything to do with sound or writing or cooking or anything like that?
I did. I learned how to direct major stuff. I part of, the great part about this pandemic that I learned early on, and I think was very helpful, is that from the beginning, I started watching our community do what our community does best. When times are tough, we come together and we raise a lot of money to help a lot of people. And one of those organizations being Broadway Cares, and our big one. And I was brought on board by Sergio Trujillo to write this giant celebration for the Broadway League called Viva Broadway, and it was a celebration of Hispanic heritage. And so I was brought on to write all the dialogue for Lin-Manuel, Cheetah, Antonio Banderas, all these huge people, which was when you think about it, the most daunting, but also like could not be more exciting, and to structure out what this evening would look like. And Sergio gave me this massive gift. The biggest gift being that we were able to raise, almost $300,000, for Broadway Bridges through the Broadway League, and that sends underprivileged kids to the theater to give them that experience, because once they have it, they get hooked. They see and they realize there's a possibility for me. And then via that, Broadway Cares hired me to write and direct their giant holiday show, Home for the Holidays, and it was all virtual. Wow. I have directed before. I've never directed virtually. I have never. I don't have conversations daily with Andre de Shields and with Tova Feldshuh and stuff like that, but I sure did then. And so I put on my best director mask and pretended that, you know, how it sound like I know what I'm doing. And we were able to create this really beautiful evening that, you know, again, you know, raised, you know, $135,000, you know, for Broadway Cares. And it really, so I learned how to direct and create these virtual benefits, but also more so, I learned that in times of great despair, there is nothing that honestly is better than being able to just figure out a way to help others in it, because man, like that's all we can do. That really is all, that's the only control I felt during this pandemic. I can control how to raise money for others and help them. That's all I can do. I can't control anything else.
And those benefit performances, by the way, that Eric crafted, I mean, it not only raised a lot of money, but it also raised the bar of what people were doing and able to do with the Zoom, you know, and online streaming format. Like it was incredibly done. And
Brett?
Yeah, just beautiful.
My poor editors.
Yeah, he ran them ragged, but it was worth it. You know, I'll also say this, that made me think, you know, something else that has come into my life last year that is very important to me is I volunteered with an organization called Be an Arts Hero. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I learned that has been really beneficial to me, and I think will be beneficial to anybody else who is kind of needing this information, is the true value of my work as an arts worker. And which is what Be an Arts Hero is really out to do, is to advocate for and demonstrate to arts workers and advocate at the federal level for the benefit of arts workers and the arts economy in the US. To know our value, to know that we are an industry that is a job multiplier, an economic multiplier, to know that we are an industry that is larger than agriculture and mining put together, that we are a invaluable part of this economy, and therefore we should have more representation at the federal cabinet level. And that's been a really empowering experience for me.
I just want to say congratulations to both of you for the show. Like I said, I watched it. It was fantastic. So yeah, thank you for coming on and talking to us about the show and introducing yourself to everybody and myself. But before we go, I always want to find out a little bit more about you. So, you know, off the beaten path, a little bit different. We already know about your demons, Eric, and so
my parents are gonna love that one, John.
But I always ask 3 questions of my guests. There's no right or wrong answer, but we're gonna find out a little bit more about you and maybe judge you at the end. But that's up to you. So question number 1, it's a nice and easy one. What creator or team within musical theater had a great influence on you? You know, it could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, even a stage manager. Could be somebody famous or not famous, like a teacher. Is there, Brett, somebody who influenced you within the musical theater world? And like I said, could be famous, could be not famous.
Yes, I'll tell you 2 people. The first one would be Bill Finn, who I don't know personally, but whose work was very influential to me as a young musical theater writer. I heard his work and thought, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And then the other person I'll say is an arts educator and artist, actor, director in Milwaukee, who was a mentor of mine named Ray Jivoff. And he, I think more than anybody else that I experienced growing up has really shaped how I view collaboration, how I view storytelling, how I view theatricality. And he's including, in addition to being a mentor, is also a very good friend of mine. So I value both of those people.
Very nice. Eric?
There's a lot of teams that put together. I'm always a big fan when I write of shows that teach and don't preach. Shows that they sneak up on you, that you fall in love and then we're hit with something. And my golden example is always Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
I will never write anything as perfect as Fiddler on the Roof, but I do hope to get close one day. And so, you know, Bach, Harnick, Stein, Robbins, that whole team, because I consider it perfect. You know, it sneaks up on you, mm-hmm. and then it just turns, and then you are in the throes of it. And by the end, you know, during this, you know, as they're all leaving there, you're a wreck. And yet it's still at the end, it leaves promise. I always love, you know, so they always influence me in the idea of how you can sneak up on an audience, and they illustrate the fundamental principle that I believe that art is the greatest weapon we have, because it sneaks in on you subconsciously, you know, but yet again, at the end, it leaves you hopeful. They're leaving their land, but then the fiddler plays that thing and he tells them to come along because we're bringing our traditions with us. And I always love the same thing, West Side Story. They carry the body off together and it plays somewhere in the chords because there's possibility of resolution. So I love that stuff. So they are the golden example. They are always my idols, and I want to one day get somewhat close to that.
Both correct answers, 1 point each. Though, Brett, I'm going to give you a half point for mentioning somebody that isn't famous, because I love when you've mentioned people that, you know, who influenced you, who don't get the recognition necessarily that they deserve, right?
Yeah.
So nothing against you, Eric, but I'm going to give him half.
Oh, it's fine. I hear it. 1.5 points. Take it.
Question number 2. How far do you think you could have walked? Do you think you could have walked from Philadelphia to California?
Oh, no. Brett might have. Brett's a lot more active and physical than like Brett goes for runs and I go, see you later.
Do you know how big this country is? You walk through Texas like that there's a lot of nothing in Texas for miles and miles, and he talks about it. I could not. No, absolutely not.
I did a hike in November, a hike, not a simple hike, but a simpler hike. And I had to have my friend Google symptoms of a stroke because I was like, I think I'm dying. I think this is it.
Every time I see Andrew in person, I just kind of like look at him. I'm just like, you did that. You who is standing before me did that. It's wild to me.
Okay, so it's a good thing you didn't base a musical on something that you guys would have walked, because it'd been like 4 blocks to the cookie store, which would have still been a good, Smackers would have been still a great musical about cookies. Right. But awesome. Okay, good point. 1 point each. It was the correct answer because I couldn't do it either. But final question, maybe the most important one. Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? Which is worse? Brett?
Cell phones.
Yeah, cell phones. I look forward to that. Like
without a doubt.
Yeah, I look forward to that. That I might just put that signal thing in that blocks the cell phones in the theater, because I just don't feel like, well, what if something happens to I assure you, if something happens to your kid, you're not going to make it back home in time for it. They're going to call 911. I hope they call 911 and they're not calling you because you are in a theater and you can't do anything about it. So I think, you know, I can deal with a chip being crunched.
Yeah.
I cannot deal with a phone.
We're used to people eating and absorbing things and it not taking us out of the moment. But the minute that we lift up a phone and the light breaks, it reminds people that there is a world outside of the illusion that we're trying to create on stage. And it's also just a sign to, you eat while you absorb anything, that's, and we do that a lot in life. But the minute that you look at a phone as an actor or on stage, I'm going, oh, am I boring you? Is there something else you'd rather be doing? So I think, yeah, cell phones, we gotta find a way to not have them in theaters.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to people who went to theater in the 50s and 60s and who, must have missed so many phone calls, and so many people had so many problems they missed.
Well, it also didn't have to have a meal. Like I just saw part of me go, if you don't have to have Twizzlers or chips I don't, like I said, that's the lesser of the two devils, but yeah. Like, if you can't go 2.5 hours without Twizzlers or a potato chip, you got to go talk to somebody better, a little more qualified than I to help you with that problem.
That's true.
Both are correct answers. I would have also accepted both are awful and banned them both. So, 3 correct answers, half point more for you, Brett, but 3 correct answers. Congratulations. There are no prizes. You just wowed the audience and the listeners.
Thank you.
Brett, Eric, again, thank you so much for talking to us about the show, and break a leg and good luck with everything you do in the future. And please keep us informed with this new project. We will promote the heck out of it.
Thanks for having us, John
Paul.
Thank
you very much. And thanks for what you're doing to spread the word about new musical theater.
Not a problem. All right. So we were just speaking with Eric Ulloa and Brett Ryback, the creators of Passing Through, here on Be Our Guest. Tune in next week as we'll be speaking with a new guest or guests about their life, love, and passion. That is musical theater. I'm your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.